You're listening to Hungry for More, an Epicurean's Dilemma, and I'm your host, Trish Close. Erich Berg on the podcast today. He's the founder and winemaker of Ricochet Wine up in beautiful Willamette Valley, Oregon. And I'm going to tell you right now, this conversation is a little bouncy in all the best ways because Erich himself is quite bouncy. In fact, I told him I've nicknamed him Tigger, and I'm going to call him Tigger for the rest of our days. He's an East Coast kid, grew up in Pennsylvania. He says he didn't really discover wine until after college. He went to Northwestern. He's working in a fine dining restaurant, and he really had to learn about these wines and know about them in order to sell them. He moves to Oregon in 2004 to work his very first harvest at Domaine Serene, of all places. He worked there for a few years, and this is where the bouncy part comes in. And I'm going to let Erich tour us through the bounciness. He's a teacher at heart. There's something he says he just loves about teaching and winemaking. And he's pulled from, different styles, different philosophies. He's pulled from different winemakers that he's worked with across the state. And he talks about this idea of Ricochet. We're bouncing again with Ricochet. But also there's something a little bit deeper there than just a label on a bottle. Here's Erich Berg.
I dig it. And then you
Cool,
get the
man.
on-air thing. You got some salt and pepper. You got all
A
the
little
things.
salt and pepper. This I stole
Yeah.
from my previous station, KTVL. We moved buildings. We built a whole brand new set in downtown Medford. And this lived at the old station, and it would light up when we were on the air.
Yeah.
And I stole it.
Did you rip it out of the wall?
The engineer did for me. Yeah.
Wow. Good for you.
A bunch of rebels. We're just
You didn't steal it. The engineer did.
there. Yeah. But it lives, it lives with me. It lives with me.
That's rad.
We met at Oregon Wine Experience.
Yeah.
I met you, tasted your wine. I was like, wow, that's really good. And I was chatting with a mutual friend of ours, Mr. Rob Folan.
Yeah. Rob.
Rob. And he's like, oh, Erich's the best. Erich and I work together. And I was like, what? You guys work together at Domaine Serene, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. That was my first gig. Yeah.
We're going to get into that because, as I told you, I did some research.
Oh, man.
Erich Berg. I want to introduce you properly. Erich Berg, founder, winemaker of Ricochet Wine up in the Willamette Valley, beautiful Willamette Valley, Oregon. Founder, winemaker for Ricochet, right?
Yeah. Yep. All the things. Yeah.
But your path to this label has kind of been a little bouncy. It's been a little bouncy.
So that's maybe part of the name for the brand for sure.
Exactly.
Yeah. My life has not been a straight line at all.
Thank goodness, right?
Well, maybe to my wife's chagrin. But I got a path now.
Good. That's important. Okay, we're gonna get into all the things wine and Ricochet, and your bouncy path. But first, where are you from originally?
Oh, I grew up in Allentown, Pennsylvania, like the Billy Joel song, north of Philly.
Love it. So you're an East Coast kid.
Oh, yeah. I'm an East Coast guy. I still get really frustrated with Oregon drivers. I've been out here for like 20 years. And so I've lived here the longest out of anywhere. But like, man, on the road, people going slow in the passing lane. It's like an Oregonian thing. It drives me bonkers.
Same. What else drives you crazy about Oregon drivers? Let's hear it.
Oh, when people turn into like a parking lot and they have to slow down to like 1 mile an hour to like turn, that drives me bonkers. There's always the classic like four-way stop and no one knows where to go.
Right.
Driving at 40 miles an hour on the highway, I just don't understand. You're supposed to be going like 70. So there's just a lot of like, if you took an Oregonian driver, standard driver, and put them in like Miami and had them drive, they would all just die.
They would.
There's no way they would survive.
They would. We just recently got back from Key West and we flew into Miami and flew out of Miami. Yeah. Well, here's the thing with, I don't want to call anybody out, but that state has some crazy drivers.
Yeah.
Specifically in Miami. Here's my thing with driving. If you go the speed limit, that's fine. You're following the rules, whatever. But as soon as you start going below the speed limit, I'm worried about your mental state, first of all.
Right.
And maybe you should not be driving, but you at least need to drive the speed limit, period.
Well, I think the reason, well, part of the problem is that we call it a speed limit. It should just be the speed.
Yeah.
That's the speed. You
Yeah.
have to go
You
at
have
least that.
right.
It should be a limit. I think like, and it's always going on behind a Prius. And back in the day, like a PT Cruiser. If I saw a PT Cruiser, I was like, I'm going to be stuck behind this person forever.
Oh, that's
And
the
it's still,
best.
if I see a Prius and it's like
Yeah.
99W and it's one lane, oh, I got one more thing. We
Okay,
got
yeah.
time for one more thing.
Yeah, always.
No one passes, like a single lane. And then there'll be like the logging truck or like the
Mm-hmm.
really slow, agricultural tractor,
Mm-hmm.
which I'm not mad at them.
No.
But then the person behind them has no cojones to go around.
Mm-hmm.
And then the person behind them doesn't have the
No.
tenacity to go around.
No.
And then like you're four cars back and you're going like 15 miles an hour because no one passes. Like
Right.
the super slow, like it's a chip shot. Just go.
Just go. Just go.
Just go.
Just go.
Yeah. Drives me nuts.
Hungry for More, the podcast has now turned into what Eric and I are pissed off at with Oregon drivers. I love it.
We could cover this for half an
We
hour.
could talk about,
Easy.
yes, easy.
Easy.
Okay, so East Coast kid, Pennsylvania. What was that like growing up there?
Oh man, that's really interesting. Well, part of my, I guess I could extend like the whole Ricochet to even like my childhood. My father was in like the pipeline business, oil pipeline business.
Mm.
That's a thing. And so we moved from outside of Philly. Then we moved to Boca Raton, and we lived there. And I was like, water taxis, this will be a good living. And then the
What?
company was like, we made a mistake. You can't live in Boca. We're moving you to Tulsa, Oklahoma. That's a shift right there. Boca to Tulsa.
Okay,
And
outside
then
Philly, from outside Philly to Boca to Tulsa.
to Oklahoma.
Culture shock, culture
Uh,
shock, culture shock.
Yeah, and I'm a kid. I don't know,
Right.
but Tulsa is definitely like it's just brown, you know. So, and Trail of Tears. It's not a great place. So, no offense, Oklahoma out
Right,
there.
right, right. Yeah.
Go Sooners. But then my father suddenly died
Oh,
when
no.
yeah, it's a whole story. But and so my mom's family, her mom, my grandmother lived in the Allentown area, and so we moved back. That's actually where my parents met, was in Allentown.
Hmm.
So so yeah, it was just kind of like all these weird circumstances where like the universe was pushing us to go around, and then Allentown is sort of like the home base,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a working class town.
Yeah.
It was a steel town. It got hit hard like post depression. Like I feel like it never really got out of there. Like we
Yeah.
had this downtown that was like very lovely downtown, and then all of like I remember it was like Bloomingdale's was down there, and we had our version of Macy's, and it was where like New Yorkers apparently would come down to Allentown to shop. And then all of those like department stores, when the mall, remember when like malls existed?
I do.
And the mall destroyed the downtown. And so then Allentown never recovered.
Wow.
And, I went to an inner city school.
Mhm.
At that time, it was still a good school, but like it was kind of, there
Yeah.
was some edges to that school.
How old were
You
you
know,
when your dad died?
he died on my seventh birthday.
Oh man, that's
Yeah,
rough. Do you have siblings?
I do. Yeah, I do. We're a mixed family. I have a older half sister. I have a younger sister, and then I have a stepbrother and a stepsister.
That's
So
that
we make,
that's
yeah,
tough.
we make the Brady Bunch look like rookies.
I love mixed families. I think those are the best. I think if you can survive,
We survived.
yeah, if you can survive like a mixed family like that, I just think I love that. I think it makes you stronger. It builds character. It's probably rough and rocky at first, or maybe all the time, but I do think it's pretty cool. That's really rough on the family. And then you guys, obviously, you moved back because I get it. Like when tragedy hits like that, you want to be somewhere familiar.
There was no reason for us to be in Tulsa, Oklahoma, other than my father's job.
Sure.
Like and at that time, I've been to Tulsa recently. Tulsa is like kind of hip now. They have breweries,
Mm-hmm.
but but at that time, yeah, there was no personal reason to be there.
Right.
So
For sure.
yeah,
Getting back to the malls, malls when I was a teenager, that's where like I would go, like, you get all dressed up and you go look for cute boys at the mall.
oh, totally. You just walk around. You have no
Yeah.
money. Yeah, it was
No
either
money.
teenagers. Yeah, it was either teenagers or like octogenarians who were getting their steps in. Like that was what the
Right.
mall was for. Yeah.
First thing in the
Um,
morning in the summertime when it's all hot, they're in the air conditioned mall, Yeah.
Yeah, doing the loop.
Getting their
Yeah.
steps in.
I remember Spencer's Gifts? Like
Yes,
I
of
was like,
course.
that was like the edgy, like,
Yeah.
I don't even know if it's like PG-13 on up and
Right.
like you'd be like, ooh, what's this thing? And
Uh-huh.
like it was a little scandalous. Yeah,
Yeah.
Spencer's.
I'm from South Carolina, and my mom would be like, don't you go into that store. I don't want you going into that
Right.
store. You
And
were
then that's why you
13
did.
years old. Yeah. And then I was like, okay, yeah, no, I don't go in there. And then, of course, I went in
Yeah.
there all the time.
Yeah.
Was food important growing up?
Is food important? Well, to some degree, yes. So my grandmother, who is like off the boat Polish from, Warsaw, moved here. Like they put her on her boat when she was like 13 and like
Yeah.
go to America.
Yeah.
Like it's a crazy, like I have a 12-year-old. I would never be like, go on a boat
It's
for
nuts.
3 months and get to the other side. But so I learned like how to make Polish food. Like I still make pierogies every year in the style of my grandmother for winter solstice. So there was like a sense of like making good food, but my mom, now a single mom with 3 kids,
Yeah.
we went back to school. We were totally latchkey kids. That was the era of like chicken nuggets
Mhm.
and like,
Mhm.
now suddenly taco shells, that
Mhm.
you just, yeah. I mean, so we, during the week or whatever, there was no time. We survived. So I think we always appreciated food. I will say, and another thing I miss, every Friday, and my family, it's still the same. Every Friday it was pizza night, and East Coast is like New York style.
Of course.
Like you fold it and
Of
whatever.
course.
So like, and then we have like things like hoagies. We don't have hoagies out here,
Man.
right? A cheesesteak. So there's an appreciation for like food that I can only get
Mhm.
there,
Mhm.
and that Oregon has never, like, even a Reuben out here is tough, man.
Yeah. No, I feel you. No, I hear you. Again, South Carolina girl. And I grew up with a single mom as well. But she was, I think, because she grew up in this house where you cook. You don't, for the most part, not every single night, but most nights she would get home from work and she would cook dinner and we would sit down and eat dinner together. And I so appreciate that because I know a lot of families didn't have that growing up.
Right.
Also single mom. My mom's a big wine fan, but she started with Franzia.
Oh, well, that's fine. That's a gateway.
Which is I call it the single mom wine. The single mom wine.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
It's
Yeah,
affordable.
it's just it's in your fridge.
And you're stressed out. You have these crazy kids that are driving you bananas and you get home from a long day and you're opening up that box of Franzia.
Yeah, and full circle, now you have wine in cans and people are, I mean, heck, during the pandemic, I had kegs that now didn't have a home. Restaurants were closed, and I was doing a pop-up like on Mondays. It was when we had to wear a mask to
Yeah.
get into a place, to take off a mask. It was all very strange.
Very.
And I had these kegs, and I didn't know what to do with them. So I got bags, Magnum bags,
Yeah.
and I just would fill them, and people loved it. They're like, "This is great." I'm like, "No, this is no different than Franzia. Like, you just didn't like it then,
Right.
but now that it's like, you put something highfalutin in there, like, oh, we love wine in a bag."
For real. For real. Was there wine ever growing up? Like, did anybody
No,
drink
we
wine?
weren't a wine town.
Yeah.
I started, and I'm gonna like totally indict my parents. I don't know what the statute of limitations is on this, but like we grew up in a time when, they knew what we were doing, particularly in high school, like going to my buddy's basement and like we're drinking beer, whatever.
Of course.
Mostly Yingling Lager. Grew up on Yingling Lager. And so like all our parents were like, "Look, just you stay down here. You're fine. We know what you're doing.
Mhm.
We don't." I think it was like a gray area endorsement,
Yeah.
but they just wanted us to be safe. Like, don't go out there and do it. Stay here. So, I mean, we were like beer.
Mhm.
I think that's how I came up. And then, but like Zima was invented. Like,
Oh my
that
God.
was
Zima. You put the Jolly
that was a
Rancher.
thing.
Remember that you put the Jolly Rancher in the Zima? So gross.
Yeah, I mean, and then there was like malt liquor, I think, because hip hop. Like, so I was like a St. Ives. St. Ives.
Yeah.
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 Like the 40.
Yeah.
And then everyone would have like these esoteric conversations. Like, what about Old E? What about Mickey's? We would have like that. So that's the kind of, we would be doing like, like malt liquor tastings.
Yeah.
That's what we were doing. But my family, no, we're not into wine. They were cocktailers. And as a kid, it was like Mad Men when
Mhm.
Dom Draper has his like 6-year-old make him a old fashioned or something. Yeah. That's what I set up the bar for parties when I was
Rad.
10.
That's
Yeah.
so cool. I mean,
Well,
But I mean, I have an appreciation, not the alcohol part, but I have an appreciation for that. Just like, getting together, your parents getting together, like with parties and that old school, like cocktail era. Like I
Yeah.
miss that. I just think that's really, I think
I
that's neat.
still have to set up the bar. My
Yeah.
mom, like if I go home for like a holiday, she's like, Eric,
Yeah.
you just set up the bar. I'm like, you guys don't even like drink anymore.
It's your
But
job.
it's like, it's my job.
Yeah. It's your job.
But they
So,
drink wine now. Now they drink wine. I got them into wine.
well, good. I would hope that they drink your wine.
Yeah, but it's again, Allentown, blue collar, like in Pennsylvania, wine is weird
Hmm.
too. I mean, they drink sweet wine out there. It's not a wine culture
Yeah.
at all.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of funny. My mom, like years ago, was like, we finally have Oregon Pinot Noir. I'm like, oh, great. That's great. Because it's a state controlled thing.
Yeah.
I'm like, who is it? And she named like one of like just the hugest Oregon. I'm not going to name it. It's, but like,
Hmm.
like they're in all 50 states and like, but Pennsylvania just got it.
Yeah.
Like they're way behind the curve on wine.
Yeah.
Way.
I'll tell my mom about some wines, and do you know Total Wine, the retailer Total Wine?
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So she'll I'll go look at Total Wine and see if they have it. And for the most part, the person helping her is always really excited if she's like, do you have this Oregon wine? And they're like, oh, we have an Oregon section, and it's like 6 bottles,
Yeah.
in a
Yeah.
store of like 200 bottles.
Yeah.
We're
Yeah.
getting there, right? Like we
Right.
have a lot of work to do, but we're getting there when it comes to sharing the craft of these beautiful wines.
Well, and I would say the one upside to that is, we think of out here, particularly in the Willamette Valley, there's this Pinot Noir fatigue, which drives me bonkers. I
Hmm.
always tell people all the time, like if you went to Burgundy and you're like, hey, French person, are you tired of Pinot Noir? They'd be like, what are you talking about? This is our heritage. And out here, it's been like, the Willamette Valley's turned 40 years old
Hmm.
like this year. It's
Yeah.
been 40 years. And people are like, I don't know. I'm over it. You got any Trousseau? What else you got? Gamay? And we can do those things. Uh-oh, dog.
Okay.
But we can do those things. But there's still all this potential because in those marketplaces, particularly a brand like mine, if people are still just discovering Pinot Noir, I don't need Brooklyn.
Yeah.
Brooklyn's got plenty of stuff. They know what's up. But if I can get my wine in Allentown and I'm one of the only players, that's a different no, that's a
Yeah.
different opportunity.
Good
So
call.
I see those small markets. I'm in South Carolina now. South
I
Carolina's
love
blowing
it.
up on wine. They're discovering it in a way that like Chicago was doing 10 years ago.
Hmm.
So I think I actually kind of find it endearing when someone goes, "You got any sweet wine?" And you go, "No, but try this." And
Hmm.
then they're on that learning curve.
I don't know if you feel this way. I'm always a little jealous of people who are just starting out on their wine journey because it's so fun. It's so interesting and fascinating when you're learning about all of these wines and you get to go in and have someone like you, and you're like, Gamay Noir, what is that? And you get to
Yeah.
explain it to them. I think that's so great. And I'm very happy for so many people who are just now starting their wine journey because it's cool. It's interesting.
Well, and I think that kind of also speaks to, I mean, I remember, when I started drinking wine in Chicago, moved to Chicago, went to school, squandered my education, became a waiter. And then to be a fine dining waiter, to make money, like you had to sell wine. And you're selling wine to like, some of the wealthiest people in
Hmm.
the city, and they know about wine. And so like you have to learn pretty quickly. But even then, it was like, and I still think to some degree today, the average consumer has like, 5 varietals that they know of. So, Cab, Merlot, Chardonnay, Sauvignon Blanc, Syrah, they don't have, they don't know what a trousseau is,
Yeah.
they have no idea. And so there are those opportunities. I also see though, like people are kind of hesitant. Like they don't always feel like they have not the permission, like the safe space. Like people like to stay in their lane
Hmm.
because they know what they like. And so I have that all the time. Like people will be like, well, I only drink Chardonnay. And I'll be like, well, this is a Pinot Blanc that's made in the same style. Do you want to try it? You can spit it out.
Yeah.
You can spit it out. And that's what they don't realize. They don't realize they don't have to like it. I think there's this weird thing where they meet someone who's trying to do something different outside the box. And there's some consumers are like, I don't want to offend you, winemaker. I think I'm gonna not like it. And it's like, you know what? One of the highest compliments I can ever get is it doesn't suck. If someone says my wine doesn't suck, I'm like, High
Cool.
praise.
Cool.
Awesome.
I don't know
Yeah.
what that is. I don't know.
Right.
I try to turn these things off. I don't know what that is. Let's back up just a little bit. You went to school in Chicago,
Yeah. I went to Northwestern.
Northwestern, fantastic university.
Mhm.
What were you studying? What do you want to be?
More Ricochet. Um, by the way, was my little puppy, is he
I
breaking
can't
into
even hear
this? Is
it.
he?
I can't even
Oh,
hear.
great. Oh, Peck. He's
Yeah.
a now 2-year-old chocolate lab. He's so cute and adorable.
Yeah.
But
I have
he-
two outside this room, and
uh,
sometimes I think you can hear them, but you can't. We're good.
okay, great. Because he sees like a robin that was just, he probably wants to eat a bird. So
Probably
it's just,
sure. He's lab.
so yeah, go to Northwestern. went in as bio pre-med, ever since my dad
What?
died. Yeah. Yeah. I was a super nerd. I was tied for valedictorian and I was really good at science, really good at math, and hated all the other like liberal arts. And I went in and was not declared, but like went in as a biology major with the idea I wanted to be a cardiothoracic surgeon. My father died of a heart.
Hmm.
He actually had hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, which is like when people just like you can't defib. It's this whole thing. So I wanted to help fix that for other people.
I
Whatever.
love that.
That was my passion. But then I get into Northwestern, which I don't think I'd get into now. And to be a bio pre-med student, like you kind of have to study like every day, like
Yeah.
Fridays, Saturdays, Sundays, constant. And it turns out that I might be like an extrovert who likes to have a good time sometimes.
Yeah.
So I just I couldn't keep up. Although coincidentally, my highest grade at Northwestern, my best grade ever for any one class was calculus 3.
What? Yeah.
I don't even know how to spell calculus
I
anymore.
know. Yeah. For real.
So, then I kind of like, I thought about being a teacher. And then my parents were like, well, you're not going to go to Northwestern to become a teacher. You got to be the thing.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, I'll do econ.
Nice.
And then, well, right, like that's pragmatic. I'll get a gig.
Sure.
It's like something I'll learn about money. And then I quickly learned that like macro, micro, great. And then it was like statistics. I'm like, I
Mm-mm.
can't do this. No.
Yeah.
So I took,
Statistics suck.
so I reflected on my, yeah, totally. I reflected on my AP Lit teacher who turned me on to like English and books. And I was like, I'm going to try this thing. And I fell in love with, I became an English major and rocked that out. And
Yeah.
I just, I didn't know what I was going to do with it. I didn't care. Seemed to me to be a pretty good like Swiss Army knife, both sides of the brain.
Right.
And there's a whole bunch of analogs. I actually think it's a good major for a winemaker, to be honest.
Yeah.
So yeah, graduated, and then it's like, what do you do with that? So
You work in fine dining restaurants.
yeah,
Yeah.
right.
But do you think that's where your intro really to wine came from? Like,
Totally.
because you're having to learn, obviously, to sell these wines, you have to learn about them.
Yeah. So, and that arc was pretty. Within a couple of years, I'm a good salesperson. That's where the English major comes in. Like, read people, interpersonal skills,
Hmm.
deal with ambiguities, right? So, I ended up waiting tables for this brand new Northern Italian themed restaurant. It was also high fashion, and I learned very quickly how to sell wine. And I was
Hmm.
also starting to nerd out, tasting the wine. Got my big book on Italy. And then I was so good at selling that the owners were like, "Well, you're now the wine buyer and the manager." And I was like, "But I'm not a wine
Wow.
buyer." Yeah, and back then, like this is now 20 some years ago, you didn't have to be like a SOM or WSET. Like I don't even know how long WSETs existed, but like it wasn't you didn't have to have that. It was more about like learn by doing, and then that's how you learn. You have distributors bring you samples, and that's how I learned about wine and Italian wine.
Crazy.
Um, yeah, and so that was my education. It was like I had to pick wines to complement a list, but also wines I knew myself and the rest of my crew could sell. So it was like this pragmatic reason to get into wine. I didn't enter wine as a wine nerd or like I wasn't, it was more like, how do I choose good wine
Yeah.
like within this price range? And like and then if I buy it, how do I sell it?
Right.
So it was a different approach to it, but ultimately it got me into digging good wine.
So you're there, you're doing this, you have this new gig. Why the move to Oregon? That was in 2004.
Yeah. So yeah, this is my 20th anniversary. August 15th, 2004 is when I arrived.
Well, happy anniversary. That's awesome.
Right. So I went to a different restaurant and it's no longer there, but it was one of the best restaurants in town, called Crofton on Wells. And Chef Susie Crofton had come out here, I think in like 1998, and maybe one of the first like Oregon Pinot camps.
Okay.
And she fell in love with Pinot Noir. And then when she came back, she had already one of the most well-respected wine lists in Chicago. And then she added a full page dedicated to Oregon Pinot Noir. So
Wow.
it wasn't just Pinot Noir from around the world. It wasn't just like Oregon, which no one knew anything about anyway. It was Pinot Noir from Oregon. And so that's where I learned about Ken Wright, and I learned about Patricia Green was like new and culty. Willa Kenzie was still like 10,000 cases and doing like small batch stuff. So I just nerded out and like I
Yeah.
was like, what is this grape? What is this place? I just loved it. It's a grape to this day that I do not have Pinot Noir fatigue.
Mm-mm.
I could drink Pinot every day. I think it's got this great spectrum from like how it can be made. And then a blizzard hit for like the eighth time living there or whatever. And my wife and I were like, you know what? Let's just move west.
Uh-huh.
I think she was thinking of something sunnier. And I was like, well, I'm gonna just try to get a gig in doing harvest. And I actually applied to both Walla Walla and the Willamette Valley. And I got a gig offered at Walla Walla, and then Domaine Serene called me and said, "Do you want to do harvest?" And I was like, "Well, Pinot is kind of what I want to do."
Yeah.
I'd never been to Oregon whatsoever, and so I drove for 3 straight days and arrived August 15th at Domaine Serene.
Crazy. Did you know I
Yeah,
can hear your puppy now, by the way, but I love
I
it.
know he's.
I think it's
Yeah, do
great.
you?
It's fine.
I
It's
mean,
fine. If
I
it's
can let him
just
out real fast.
go for it. Yeah.
Well,
If
because
it's
it's on video.
Oh, you're
You're gonna
fine.
see me leave.
I can edit.
All right.
Hey everybody,
Oh,
I'll
great.
edit this part
Hold on.
out.
They don't do anything all day,
Of
and then you do a
course.
Zoom call, and they're
Of
like,
course.
"This is when."
Yeah.
So sorry about that.
No, it's all good. It's all good. You're not the first person who's had to get up and let a dog out or
Oh,
do
good.
something with the dog. You're fine.
I'm glad there's precedent.
2004, Domaine Serene. Did you realize when you landed this working harvest at Domaine Serene, did you realize it was Domaine Serene?
No, and there's some other. Yeah, no, I did not. Well, ish, because I started kind of researching it, and I remember going to I think like Benny's or something, and I was like, I should buy some wine from this place that so I have context, and I saw the prices at like on the shelf, and I'm
Yeah.
like, oh,
Yeah.
well, I can't afford this. This is where I'm going. So I had a little bit, but I still didn't really have like when I came out here, I didn't really have the context of like all the different types of wineries and the ethos and whatever. So I arrive at Serene and the Dundee Hills. I mean, it's also Domaine Druin's there, Archery Summit. Those would probably be like the big anchor three,
Yeah.
and kind of the similar ethos, kind of also competitive a little bit. Um, and I had no idea that wineries, I just thought that's what a winery was. And so, but yeah, I quickly learned like, what the demographic
Mhm.
was for Domaine Serene. But I mean, and I can't vouch for now. I would assume it's been the same. I mean, it was a really great place to learn um, because it had a great production crew and the standards were really, really high.
Exactly.
So if there was any place to like learn, I mean, even just in terms of keeping a cellar clean, to be fastidious, because that's part of, you're showing the place, like
Mhm.
it had to sparkle and you had to get it dirty and then make it sparkle again. Like
Yep.
that's still very much a part of like, you know, I try to run a really clean ship because of what I learned at
Sure.
Serene. And that's not necessarily true at all wineries.
Yeah. It sticks with
Um,
you, right? It sticks with you.
totally.
Yeah. And
And so I got to,
Your English major's coming out, Mr. Fastidious.
hey,
Yeah, good.
SAT word.
So yeah, go ahead.
Uh,
Sorry.
So I was there for harvest. I had, the winemaker at the time was the inestimable, see, that's hard. Tony Reinders. Drew Voigt was the associate winemaker. He's currently my landlord, so full circle.
Wow.
Rob Folan was a cellar master. A guy named Michael Lundeen was there. He's now got Lundeen Wine. So like there was this really good crew that I got to be kind of a part of. And we like certainly we can talk about Rob, but Rob, like we had good times down in the cellar because it was like we were like in the ground. We were like 4 stories down. Like we were the dungeon masters. Um, but we were producing this really high end stuff and we had all of the resources. That was the benefit. Like we had all the toys.
Mm-hmm.
We're getting the state fruit that was amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that also is I know how to take apart a bottling line. And you don't have to do that anymore. You can
Mm-hmm.
hire someone out with a truck to come up and like you don't have to know how to do lab work anymore. You can send it off to the lab here in town and they do all the work.
That's
You have to be
crazy.
able to assess the data. But when I was at Serene, if I was in the lab, I learned how to do lab stuff.
Mm-hmm.
If I was working with Rob and we had a bottling line, we took that thing apart and put it back together ourselves. And so it was a really I owe Serene a lot for my education. I do not have a degree in winemaking. I went to
You
take
went to
classes
graduate
and I was
school.
like,
You went,
I did,
Serene
I
was your
did.
graduate school. Serene was your graduate school.
Oh yeah, yeah. But I also did go to graduate school
Right. I
after
do. I
that.
have that on here. So, but yes, I mean, I love that though. It was like this, you have this job there, but it's not just a job, right? Because you're learning so much. What you're learning there is invaluable and how that carried you through where you are now.
Right. My ethos now is very different. I don't utilize the things that I learned how to use all the
Mm-hmm.
time or any
Mm-hmm.
of the time. But to me, this might be a little cheesy, but I think it's a good analogy. Like I went to Barcelona after graduating college, did the whole like, I'm gonna backpack around, $50 a day or whatever, smoking cigarettes to survive.
Love it.
And we went to Barcelona and there's the Picasso Museum.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought I knew about Picasso, like abstract art, cubism, blah, whatever, Picasso. But you go into that museum, and the very first like room or whatever section, it's like very technical anatomical drawings, and it's
Mm-hmm.
Picasso. So Picasso learned to be a technician first, and then he blew it up. And then he said, I don't need to do this. I can do this other thing. I think the same is true for music. I think it's certainly true for like poetry as an English major. You see like someone like an E. E. Cummings. E. E. Cummings knows how to write a sonnet like Shakespeare, but he doesn't want to.
Mm-hmm.
So what I think you have to have that foundation. What I see now is that there's a lot of enthusiasm to get into winemaking. And that experience where you have those harvests and where you have that experience, it matters a lot. It's like because you do, like you said, you take it with you. And if you're taught poorly or not with as much depth, you don't have any context to know that you didn't get as good a
Mm-hmm.
harvest gig or education that someone else did. So having that foundation, and then you can make those decisions. Like I know how to use this tool. Do I need to use it all the time?
Right.
Like that's where I've evolved to.
I think that's so important. I felt a huge responsibility in my newsroom to train reporters in a way that when they went to their next station, it was like almost I felt better about myself if their new boss was like, "Hey, nice shooting," or "Hey, you
Yeah.
you wrapped that cord the correct way," or "You take care of your gear in a way that where did you learn all this stuff?" I think that's a huge responsibility to pass that on. And I love the fact that, you and Rob, who I think Rob's a fantastic winemaker,
Mhm.
one of my favorites. And I love that you guys had this schooling at, one of the most awarded wineries in America.
Mhm.
I think it's awesome. And I love the fact that now, I mean, Domaine Serene has a reputation, a fantastic
Mhm.
reputation. But I love the fact that you moved to Oregon and you're like, yeah, I'm doing a harvest at this place called Domaine Serene. Cool.
No idea.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
I think that's so great.
Well, and what was interesting, there's those high expectations, but our mutual friend Rob, he's those of us that were working down there, we were just authentically, yeah, we wanted to learn how to do the things and we were having fun. But I mean, it was like this nice blend of like we were being technicians because we had these high expectations and we were learning, but we also like to hang out with each other. Like it wasn't,
Sure.
despite the fact that it was like this brand that had this, upper level ethos or whatever, however you want to phrase it. Like we were literally just the guys in Carhartts. Like
Yep.
no one saw us. We're,
Yep.
you know,
Yeah.
and we had our own little. We had good camaraderie. We had
Hmm.
our own little world down there. It was great.
Do you think you obviously you picked up a lot of things from Domaine Serene? You know, you just mentioned one as far as like, keeping things clean and getting them
Mhm.
dirty and then cleaning them again. Do you feel like you absorbed other, winemaking styles or other philosophies from this place?
Well, that's probably a better question because, I bounced to some other places. So I
You did,
think, yeah. So I left. So I was at Serene for 3 years.
right?
So they hired me full time. And but then I had to have hip surgery at
So I
the
read this that you had to have hip replacement surgery, right?
no, it wasn't replacement. Actually, someone just asked me this today randomly before this.
Really? That's weird.
Yeah, a friend of mine was going through Tacoma, and I had open hip surgery in Tacoma, not a replacement. They had to reconstruct me. I don't have a cool story. I wasn't like hella skiing on Hood or something.
Well,
It was
make one
just
up. I'm just
I'm just an
kidding.
old dog. I don't know. So, but then I couldn't walk for like 2 years. I
Right.
had a cane. I had a cane, so I couldn't do winemaking. Actually, Serene, they were very, very like they could have been like, "Well, you're no use to us,"
Yeah.
but I ended up doing more lab work, and I was like the compliance guy. But at that point, I was a little jaded, and I just like, what am I going to do here? I can't do what I want to do. So that's where I went back and got my master's degree, and then I became a high school English teacher down in Dallas, Oregon. Long story long, I only lasted about 6 years there, and that's when I burned out. Um,
From teaching
and
and the
yeah,
vineyards were calling you back, weren't they?
well, so yeah, I burned out. I thought I was going to teach forever, and I was really good at it. I became the AP teacher, but I was the tennis coach. I was doing all these things. I was ad hoc committees. I actually helped design the teacher performance evaluation model that basically did me in. So one of the tenets of a tragic hero in Shakespeare is that the tragic hero has a tragic fall, but it's their own fault,
Yeah.
right? So Hamlet dies because he can't make a decision, right?
Right.
That's his flaw. So for me, I got so involved and I was so ambitious, and
Hmm.
then I created the thing to help assess teacher evaluation, and then I couldn't pass my own thing. And so I just went,
You're Eric, you're kind of a nerd. This is great.
oh yeah, totally.
You're
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
you're a total nerd. This is awesome.
Yeah, I'm a nerd, but I'm also like I'm one of the skills that I think I've always been an educator. Like when I was a salesperson, it was more about like I didn't want to sell something inauthentically, right?
Totally.
So
Yes.
um because I started in health insurance. This is all crazy. And I didn't there's no like passion behind health insurance. So I waited tables.
You're very bouncy.
So
You're bouncy.
I'm
You're like
super
you're
bouncy.
Tigger. You are Tigger. You're like very,
I
very
was Tigger. I was
bouncy.
Tigger. I think well, I'm still kind of bouncy. That might be ADHD. But
That's fine.
so, so I burn out hard,
Yeah.
medical leave, burnout. And then my good friend, Brad Ford, who owns Illahi Vineyards is in Dallas. And he was like, and I still give him credit. I think he saved my life. He knows that. So Brad, thank you.
Yeah.
Um, he said, brother, you gotta stay active. I only made it 3 weeks into that whatever school year that was, and I burned out. So he's
Wow,
like,
that's pretty big. Like you just said, you have to go. I'm out.
my brain broke. My brain broke.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm pretty open about these things. I mean, I support a lot of mental health. Like
Yeah.
I mean, the taboo of that. I think the pandemic has helped. Like now, people like you have a therapist. I got a
Yeah.
therapist. You like your therapist?
Well, also you have to understand, I will ask pretty much anything, and if you don't want to answer it, just say I don't want to answer that. But most people
No.
are like, I can't believe I told you that. And I'm like, well, that's your fault. I'm just asking the questions.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Right.
I think you only made it 3 weeks into that school year. That's pretty major,
Yeah.
dude.
So it was still harvest, and so that was 2014, I think. And so he was like, just come work harvest, just to be busy. And I hadn't worked for 6 years, since Serene.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay. And I went and, it was good. It was good to like work and not think about
I was
things.
just gonna
And that's
say
that's the beauty of
you
harvest.
didn't have to think
Yeah.
about anything. And like,
No. And that's ultimately why I'm in my lane because I think what I'm good at is I can manage people, I can manage a harvest, I can deal with ambiguities, I can project manage, but also it's not the static gig. Like harvest is its time. Right now I'm doing event planning, it's sales time. I mean, it's just like I am bouncy, but I can be bouncy within this gig, right? Because it's got all these different things. I'll be on Instagram for an hour today,
Perfect.
which yeah, well, but so anyway, I became the assistant winemaker in a couple weeks. Brad was like, "You're in charge of the crew," and it
Love
all
it.
came back. And Illy he has a very different mindset, very more low intervention. We're making wine with horses and no electricity, just more experimental, but
Mm.
still science driven. Um, and then lastly, I mean, not to go too far ahead, but I ended up working at Day Wines,
Yeah.
and that's a natural wine philosophy. So I guess the long story long on this one is, I learned a lot from Serene, but then I had these three sort of like
Hmm.
really good
Hmm.
experiences that showed me the spectrum of winemaking and the decisions that you can make and like what's your house style, what's your approach.
Right.
And for some people, it's pretty binary. Like we want to control everything from grape to bottle the whole way, and we're going to use packaged things and we're going to, and that's fine. That's kind of how I learned. Like we have an expectation that every year we need to, we need it to be up here all the
Right.
time. That's a decision. Not right, not wrong. It's just the way it is. And then you have the whole other side, which is like, we did nothing at all. And, if it's
Right.
flawed, it's natural. And that's not right or wrong. I might not agree with it, but there's a whole lot of people that are really into that. Like funk is a good word, not for me, but for a lot. And so what's great about that is like it's like democracy in a bottle,
It,
right? Like you can
yes.
have, yeah, you can have this whole range. And that could just be for like Pinot Noir, right? This whole range. And for me, it's like, okay, let's put together a quilt. What worked well here? What do I need to do here? And more importantly, like if something starts, if I'm like, this is going funk, I just reserve the right to like, I know what to do in that case.
Hmm.
Because for me, I want my wines to be clean.
Hmm.
I want them to be consistent and good, but maybe
Mm.
hands off. Like there's that happy medium. So
Of course.
I kind of learned to pick and choose from all my experiences. I'm not dogmatic at all. Like I'm still learning.
I was just
I'm a
gonna say
nerd.
that you literally have just like a little bit from here, a little bit from here, a little bit from here, mixed in with your own style, your own philosophy, which
Mhm.
becomes your philosophy with all those
Right.
things. Yeah.
And then what's true for philosophy in general, or politics or whatever. I mean, people are often binary in that. So they'll say, "This is my style." And in winemaking, what I have learned, 2020 is a good example. Wildfires, like, if you're like, "Well, this is the way I always make wine," that was not the year to do that.
Yeah.
So, what's different about wine is you have to have these experiences because if you're dealing with a different harvest, let's say, and fruit comes in and it's not meeting the ideal of your style, you better know how to call an audible.
Hmm.
I mean, that's basically the essence. It's so I always say brewing is baking. If you're making beer, that's the equivalent of baking. You make cupcakes and everyone loves your cupcakes. You can dial that in and make the same cupcakes over and over
Right.
again, and people will love it. So an IPA, dial it in, you can make that forever. Wine, you got one shot, and you're cooking.
You're
Wine,
cooking,
wine is cooking.
shooting from
Yeah,
the hip. Yeah.
shoot from the hip. I know how to make pierogies. I'm putting my salt here. I'm not measuring it out. That's cooking. Tomato sauce. You don't have rosemary. You got people coming over. You're
Right.
gonna call an audible,
Right.
right? So that to me is what I've learned is like you cannot be dogmatic. You can have a style, you can have something that you're going for, but you're reading the tea leaves as you're going the whole time.
Hmm. I want to get back quickly to you have this burnout. You're a high school English teacher, obviously very successful there just based on what you've told me, but then you burn out, you're in the vineyard for harvest. Do you have like an aha moment? Does the light bulb go off for you? Or were you just happy
Yeah.
to be there and not in the classroom?
I missed the classroom terribly. Actually, it wasn't even about the classroom so much as like a lot of other things. But yeah, because so Illahi showed me that wineries don't have to just be selling to up here. Like you can make like that was eye-opening to me. Like you can have fun. It's a beautiful vineyard. I had lunch looking at Mount Jefferson all the time, but there was no pretense, right? It was we were just trying to make good wine, doing some experimental stuff, but really just trying like still trying to make like these really good quality wines, building the brand. We went from I think 5,000 cases to 10,000 cases the year I was there. Like
Wow.
so there was a lot of stuff like it wasn't something that was like already established up here and then me coming in it was we're building this brand and we're building our style and we're learning together and it was it was yeah, I think I got the bug. I don't know if I really had the bug at Serene the way that people get it. um and I don't know why that necessarily is. It could have been because of the surgery. I have to think about that. But like at Illahee, I was like, oh, I can get down with this. This is a little more chill. This is a little bit, and I kind of like the hands-off thing. I kind of like I was starting to learn how to relinquish control. That was a big lesson for me. And so, yeah, I think so. I think I was kind of like, I dig this. I still wanted to be a teacher. I left Illahee everything's in threes, 3 years. I quit and because I was offered to teach in juvenile detention and I felt so badly.
What? What?
Yeah, 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 yeah. So I was actually cleaning the press and I got a call, and I was headhunted by a former boss of mine I was asked if I wanted to teach kids in jail. And this is how messed up this is in hindsight. I felt so badly for burning out. Like I felt like I messed up because I didn't quit a job on my own terms. And I think there's some shame there. So I'm working for my best friend, having a great time, making wine. And I said yes. I said yes to the gig.
Do you felt like you
And
owed somebody something?
yeah, maybe myself. I felt like a failure. I thought I was going to teach forever. And then I had this really naive idea. It's like, oh man, I want to I want to redeem myself. And so
Right.
here's an opportunity to teach kids that are like the most alienated and probably mess up their lives forever. And maybe I can fix jail, you know? And so pretty naive. Obviously, I'm not doing that anymore. So that didn't work out.
Uh,
So I left Illahee and as soon as I took that gig, I was locked in a room with 16 kids that offenders of some kind from 12 to 24 years old. And I had to teach them the 5 paragraph model. And I was like, what is happening right here?
do you feel like you
So
made a mistake when you took that job?
I think mistake's a heavy word. I actually got to enjoy the teaching part, but it turns out jail's pretty rigid. And,
Yeah.
um, and I couldn't take a day off. And, yeah, I became I was going to jail voluntarily, but like, I felt like I was kind of in jail. So,
Yeah.
it wasn't a mistake because, I mean, everything's kind of an experience, right? So how many
Mhm.
people have worked in a juvenile detention facility and worked with kids that have and so my whole thing, by the way, I never knew what they did. I wanted to retain their humanity. So
Nice.
I never wanted to know what they did. And I know but some of them were being tried as adults. They did
Right.
something pretty
Really bad.
nefarious. Yeah.
Maybe mistake is the wrong word. Do you feel like when you took the job and you were there and things started to progress, were you just like, what have I gotten myself into? Was it
Yeah. I
more like,
realized I should not have left
okay,
Illahee.
okay,
Yeah. Yeah,
yeah.
for sure.
Then how long did you do that?
When I was offered the job, they were like, just promise you'll last at least a year. So I've learned if someone says that to you, don't take the job.
Mm,
I think I lasted 8 months.
yeah. All right. And then was Day Wines next? Did you?
So then I couldn't get a gig and I couldn't decide what I wanted to be when I grew up, even though I
Yeah.
was getting older.
I was at how
So,
old how old how old were you when this was all going down? When you took the job at the juvenile detention center?
man, 35-ish, I think,
Okay.
36, somewhere there.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm getting old. 30s are
You're
supposed to be like,
you're
you know who you
you're still
are.
bouncing. You're still Tigger. You're just bouncing around.
Yeah, I wish I was more motivated. This could be a whole other podcast. I think about like my 20s and I was pretty cavalier. Like I didn't want to go do anything for money. Now part of me is like, maybe I should have.
Uh,
But everything's good. It's all like these are all
I was
experiences.
just gonna say they
But
were
I
experiences for you, 100%.
yeah. But I think I just didn't have I don't know why I couldn't figure out what I wanted to be. And I think it's like a jack of all trades, expert in none kind of vibe. Like I would get bored. I would just get,
Erich,
with the
I feel
exception
you.
of
I
working
feel
out.
you so much. I feel you so much. Like people, when I left the news, everybody's like, "What do you want to do?" And I'm like, "All the things. I want to do all
Right.
the things. I want to do
Yeah.
this. I want to have a podcast. I want to help with this. I want to do video production. I want to do all the things." I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Oh, good. Well, thank you.
Yeah, everybody's like, "Well, aren't you
You
worried
should call
about?"
my mom.
Okay, I will. Everyone was like, "Aren't you worried about your brand because you're going to be doing all these things?" And I was like, "Fuck my brand. What brand? Like,
Yeah.
what are you talking
Yeah.
about? Like,
Yeah.
I think
No, and
life is
I
too
think it's
short."
actually yeah, I think it's come around and I try I've been really working on trying to be more grateful and like because what the irony is, this is gonna, I think we took a side path here, but like
It's all good.
I don't pay myself yet for my brand, right? Um, and I do have friends that stuck to it and they have buku bucks and they can go to Sardinia whenever they want. And I'm trying, I've always been like, I want to go to Sardinia. And I'm just not in that position. And also I can't leave because I'm doing my thing.
Yeah.
And I've had a lot of my friends just go, man, I wish I could do what you're doing. So, and which is always so fascinating to me
Mhm.
because maybe we're wired, the grass is always greener. But I think what my experience has been and where I'm at now and why I love what I'm doing is it is dynamic and I can do all the things and I don't get bored. And I think that people who are like they've had the same gig for 30 years, they might be really good at that. But now they're just, I don't know. I think some of my friends, they're like, I can do this blindfolded, you
I can do it in
know?
my sleep. Yep.
Right. And so, and that's again, not right or wrong, but it's just always fascinating to me that I have one friend, he's like, I mean, I really wish I could just quit my job and just like start making wine. I'm like, you can. And then they'll be like, well, but my benefits. I'm like, well, there you go.
Yeah. No, I hear you. So, okay, so let's get back to you.
Oh yeah, wine.
You're teaching this for you're doing this gig for 8 months, and then
Yeah, get out. And then I forget. Oh, yeah. That was like 2017. So I think I must have started that in 2017. Oh yeah, because I left Illinois in 2017. So end of 17, around harvest, I quit that gig. And then I didn't know what to do. So I did harvest for Andrew Rich at the Carlton Winemaker Studio. And
okay.
that's just harvest. So I was like a harvest grunt all of a sudden.
Uh-huh.
And Andrew's great, loved it. And then but then harvest is over. So I just became a substitute teacher.
Okay.
And I did that for a bit and kind of bounced. And then couldn't find a wine gig to say, there's not a lot, a lot of competition. And then I met Brienne and she
Hmm.
needed an assistant winemaker. And so yeah, somewhere in there, I was just surviving,
Yeah.
just trying to find. I still thought I'd be a teacher because I was like, well, the wine world won't have me. There's no opportunities. And then fortunately, yeah, Brienne was like, you want a gig
Yeah.
working for me? And I was like, yeah, great.
And I've interviewed Brienne, and I love her. I think she's just marches to the beat of her very own drum. What did you pick up from her as far as wine style goes?
A lot of things. At
Mhm.
first, I totally owe Brienne a lot for just starting my brand. So, before that, like I had no concept of really like relinquishing control and letting a wine, watching it, curating it, but letting it kind of be what it wants to be. Not wild use ferments, all these. So there was that was different for me. I think I've always been kind of a control freak in general. So that's where like relinquishing control became a concept, I think.
Mm.
Certainly working with varietals like, I get to meet Herb Quaddy by going down south. Like I'd never worked with fruit from your neck of the woods, from Southern
Right.
Oregon.
Right.
So Brienne's very experimental, and I think that that's something to take with co-fermented stuff instead of blending on the back end. Like that was different to me.
Hmm.
So there was a lot. There was a lot there, and very, very different than where I began. So, and I think also just seeing the hustle. I mean, she built a brand,
Yeah.
and she's still hustling. She,
She
like
is.
there's you don't rest on your laurels in this gig.
Yeah.
You gotta keep pushing, and she's a fighter for sure.
What I love about Brienne too is that she really does seek out some of the best fruit. Like she's really looking for
Mhm.
things that are different and interesting, and she's not stuck or wants to stay in this little box of I'm going to make Pinot Noir and Chardonnay. It's just
Right.
all these different
Well,
things.
right. And that's where I started,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And then Illahee was a little different because we had like Lagrein and we had Tempranillo Rosé. I was like, huh.
Hmm.
And then then Brienne totally blows that up because she still had a Pinot Noir and Chardonnay, but then it's like here are all these other things that Oregon can offer.
Right.
And that was definitely new to me for sure.
So, how do you choose then? Well, actually, I'm going to back up a little bit. This idea for Ricochet came in 2018, or that's when it started.
Right. So, and that was when I was at Day Wines, and that was my first year at Day Wines. And I asked permission. I said, "Hey, I've been making wine for, other people and everything. I've never done it myself. Like it's different when you still have a head winemaker, and ultimately it's their call. And like, I'd be the field general and like follow the order, like,
Hmm.
do the things. It's very different, even if you're doing the same things. Once it's yours, once it's your money on the line, it's your thing. It's a very different pressure, and I wanted that pressure. So I asked permission. I said, "Can I do a little bit of wine on the side?" And Brienne said, "Sure." So I did like 1 ton of Pinot Noir and 1 ton of Gruner Veltliner, and I had no intention of starting a brand. Honestly, I had some friends and family. I was like, I sold shares. I was like, for $500, you're gonna get, just help me buy the fruit and a couple barrels. And I had a bunch of people that were shareholders, and I was literally just going to. I always say, like, like the conference, like, my name is
Right.
sticker.
Yeah.
I was gonna get those and put like, hello, my name is Pinot Noir,
Love it. Oh my gosh, I
and
love
just
it.
and just hand them. Yeah, I was just gonna hand them to people, and then again, gratefully to Brienne, she tasted my Gruner, uh, and she's like, hey, this is good. You should use my winery license and make it legit. And since I was the biggest shareholder, so I gave people the things, I started carrying a bag and I went up to like Olympia Provisions and they single-handedly like bought all my Gruner. And then that was like a legitimating moment. I went,
Wow.
huh, like this is real. And so I just made a little bit more the next year, but then I had a brand. And it went from those 2 tons in 2018 to 35 tons as
Yeah.
of last year.
Poof, poof. You're a winemaker with a brand. Why Ricochet?
Right. So, okay. I
Yeah.
mean, there's two
Uh
reasons.
huh.
One is my existential crisis, right? Life is not in a straight line. It's a French name, so
Uh huh.
I can't name it after myself. There's already a Berg Strom. I can't do like Berg Cellars. That's not going to work.
No.
But there's the bouncing back and forth, and then particularly after my time my time in juvie, um, I have this like I think community. I still feel like I owe something because I'm not a teacher anymore. I'm not like doing something important. Um, so I want my brand to help in a way. So I donate 5% of my annual profits to different regional nonprofits that help people bounce back. So I call them my neighbors in need,
Mm,
and just and not like huge organizations that don't need money, like grassroots organizations that are, locally trying to help with the homeless crisis in wine country, which is awful.
yeah.
And so helping those folks bounce back. I've worked with formerly incarcerated neighbors in need. Um, some of my wine's been bottled by former inmates, so just trying to, I like this. I want my brand to be the Dave's Killer Bread of winery. Like
Nice.
that's my goal. That's my
Okay.
goal.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I would disagree with you. I think you are doing something important. And I think on some level, you are still teaching because I'm assuming you have people, whether it's harvest or bottling, you're teaching all the time. I would imagine.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And now I have folks that do help me out, and it is interesting. Um, Actually, to that point, I don't have a tasting room, right? And so I
Mhm.
do tours and tastings, and they get me, and we walk around, and I love that because
I'm sure you
what I
do.
thought, well, yeah, jazz hands. But what is interesting to me is I don't even know I'm doing this. I'm showing out like mundane stuff. Like, here's a press. You want to stick your head in the press, or you want to dip into barrels? I let everyone do that kind of stuff. And then for them, it's like this totally novel
Yep.
experience
Yep.
because they've never dipped into a barrel in their life. And I'm
Right.
like, yeah, whatever. But then they go, well, can we ask you some questions? And they're questions that they never can ask in a traditional tasting room environment because they don't have that like access to or
Yeah.
something. So yeah, it's been fun. So I guess yes, I appreciate that. I just suppose I'm not helping kids get into college anymore, you know.
Yeah. That's okay. That's okay. You're doing I think you're right where you should be. I think the universe has put you right where you should be.
Ricochet or bust at this point.
Ricochet or bust. Okay. I want to wrap up just a little bit, but we have to talk about the indie wine mixer because this is something
Yeah,
that you created, you started.
I did. And it started with just four of us. So 2 or 3 Thanksgivings ago. So again, no tasting room.
Right.
And I was gonna just rent a place here in McMinnville for myself. I was just gonna do an open house, Ricochet open house. And I don't even know. I was just I think just talking with some of my fellow indie folks, I was like, you guys want to join me? Like you want to like
Mhm.
we can share the costs and just show up. And so it was like me and Jackalope and Mahita and Gonzalez is the four of us. When I created the thing and it was very casual and we were on like the balcony of Mac Market, which is kind of new. And it was like this kind of cool success. Like it was just we got people in and we sold bottles and like, rising tides, right? More people came because we
Yeah.
brought our little fan bases. And then the following year, I was like, Memorial Day is also this big open house weekend. Again, no tasting room. And I think I put out like an email or something. And I was like, how many of y'all that are under, they're small, how many of you would be interested in doing a thing? And almost instantly, I got like 20 emails being like, I'll do it.
Yeah.
So I was like, huh. So I found a venue. It's still at the Bindery, where it's going to be at this coming weekend. Last year was awesome. There was 25 winemakers, 2 days. This year
Wow.
it's like 33 winemakers over 2 days, all under 2,000
Hmm.
cases or less. Most of the wineries are like 150 to 350 cases, like Pequeño. This is their first event, like the first event where they're showing their
I
wines
love
the
it.
first time.
Oh.
Yeah. So a mix of folks. Some folks have been making wine for, uh, a decade or more,
Mhm.
and they're still indie. And they're welcome to be part of that. Then there's folks, yeah, they're just eking it out. It's all shoestring budgets. And then the winemaker has to be there. That's the other thing.
Yeah.
So if you're indie, you don't have a national salesperson.
No.
You don't have a tasting room. You are the national
You're
salesperson.
it.
You're it. So what's cool about the event is people get to meet the people
Mm.
making the thing. And so last year it was super chill. People had a blast. It wasn't it didn't become like a shit show where it was just like asses to elbows. It was like people hung out, food trucks, all these things. And people had really great connections. People sold winemakers sold wine. We developed a really cool camaraderie as small winemakers. We like hanging out. So it wasn't competitive either. Like
Yeah.
it was genuinely good.
I'm sure there's a lot of support too because you're all in the same boat, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, we're
Yeah.
all paying rent
Yeah.
and none of us have the resources but we still have a brand and the hustle is
Right.
what it is. And
Um,
so yeah, so it's been a success and
awesome.
trying to grow it a little bit.
Hmm.
We're going to be doing a Southern Oregon
I know.
version down there. Yeah.
So cool.
So
Sound and
taking the brand down
Vision.
there.
Yeah, Sound and Vision. They're going to be kind of the hosts, right, of the
Right.
Indie Wine
Yeah,
Mixer.
Joe and Carmen, they said, hey, because they're coming up. And they were part of the Thanksgiving one last year.
Okay.
And that's where I really got to meet them. I actually shared a table at the Alt Wine Fest with them, I think last year. That's where I got to meet them and super rad folks. And then they're coming up for this Memorial Day. And they asked me, they're like, we don't have anything like that down here. Like, can we use your branding? Can we take the Indie Wine Mixer and have a Southern edition? And I was like, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So that'll be
Please.
first. I'm coming down
I
there for
know.
that.
That's awesome. Please tell me this name came from Step Brothers. Please tell me there was some
Yes,
part
a
of it.
little
Okay.
bit. Yeah. Yeah.
The,
Well,
the Catalina wine mixer, boats and
yeah.
hose, please. Yes. Okay. Thank
Yeah,
goodness.
there's a little bit. There's a little bit of that.
Good. Good. That makes me very happy. That makes me very
Yeah.
happy. Okay. I said we were going to wrap up, but I have one more question for you and kind of a big one.
Yeah.
I know wine industry, especially in Oregon, wine industry, we're facing some uphill battles and
Yeah.
challenges.
Yeah.
Do you see that the future for Oregon wine is bright? Is it a little dim? Are you worried about it?
Huh. Well, oh, that's a great question. I
Yeah.
mean, there was no great news at the symposium this year where, last year wine sales are down 30%.
Right.
For the first time, I've lost club members. So a lot of it is, inflation's real. Even folks that are, middle income and above, like their wallets are getting tight. And so if groceries are $300 a week now, a
Yeah.
$40 bottle of wine just suddenly becomes more of a decision.
Mhm.
So I'm optimistic for I think like my brand and brands like mine that are like we're not trying to get we don't I don't have a $150 bottle of wine. I don't know what's happening in that market. Um, I feel like if you are making good wine that's accessibly priced, that's still where people are at.
Yeah.
But it's definitely tough. I think in general though, like I was saying earlier, I mean people are still discovering Oregon. So from that perspective, it's almost like out of state stuff is maybe and wine tourism here. There's still some good stuff there, but there are some challenges and there's economic challenges there. I'm sitting on inventory for the first time. I'm growing. I've sold out of everything every year. That's why you grow. And I'm not alone. There's people you're gonna see wineries make less wine this year because they're like, well, we
Right.
still have this stuff from last year. Um, but I think it all corrects itself. And most people in this business I'm not an optimist by like nature, but I think it's a rather optimistic industry.
Yeah.
Why else do the thing that we do?
For sure. And one message that I've been trying to push for the last several months is that when you're supporting, especially Oregon wine, let's just say, but you're not just supporting this industry, you're supporting families, you're supporting migrant workers, you're supporting
Hmm.
farmers, you're supporting the land. Like you really are supporting so much more than just this bottle of wine that you may enjoy with dinner. So I think I just want people to keep that in mind that it's not about an alcoholic drink. It's not about, you know what I mean? Like I just think
Right.
there's so much more that goes into it. And when we celebrate Oregon wine, we're celebrating the pioneers that moved here in the 70s and started something that they didn't even know what they were doing. We're supporting so many families and farmers and agriculture. It's bigger. It's bigger than
And
just
we're
this
small. I
very
mean, we're
small.
new. We're new. I
Yeah.
mean, we're challenging, at least from Pinot Noir, we're on the planet, five places that do it well, right? And we're one of them, and it's been 40 years, and now we're competing against Burgundy,
Right.
and we're making that level of wine to achieve that. I think that message gets lost sometimes because it's such a competitive marketplace, and if a bottle's just on a shelf in a store, a consumer doesn't necessarily know the narrative behind like what is this Oregon wine like what's the story behind this.
Yes.
And I think when they do learn like the trends right now is as we go from boomers who are more consumer oriented, they want the Opus One, right?
Hmm.
That's a status thing.
Hmm.
Gen Z now they're getting into drinking anything. One, they're drinking less, but they want a story. They want an experience. They're
Yeah.
more about the ethos of a thing than anything else. And if I don't care what business you're in, but certainly in the wine business where people are now not drinking at all, um, to capture people that do drink, it cannot just be to your point. It cannot just be a thing to get you lit. There has to be the story. Wine is food.
Yeah.
I always say that wine's community. You
Hmm.
pop open a bottle,
It
you're
is.
not drinking it by yourself. You're sharing it, right?
Yeah.
So, and I think when you engage people on that level, that level of authenticity, um, that's the mark. That's the growth potential. That's
Yes.
where you get. Most of my club members are millennials and Gen Z at this
Yeah.
point.
And I've been preaching that forever. You have to give me a story. I'm a storyteller, so
Yeah.
if anyone's listening, you want me to tell your story, give me a call. But yeah, you have to it's all about the story in my opinion.
Yep.
And for the most part everyone has a story, and so I think if we focus on that, I am an optimist, so I think that glass is half full 100%. So
Even Franzia prized the story.
right. Exactly. Okay, Erich Berg, we are going to wrap up finally and get to the final three. Best
Oh
advice
yeah,
yeah, I prepped you on these. Best
I know.
advice you've ever been given.
it's a tie between Bradford and Andrew Rich when I had
Okay.
those experiences, because both because I learned to be more technical and to control things, right? Both of them were just like so Bradford at Illahee was like, you can't like just don't like sometimes you have to lead with your nose. So he was more qualitative. We still had a lab and we had data, but the data corroborated what we were experiencing as opposed to let's be data driven first, right? So that was important. And then that brief harvest I had with Andrew Rich, very similarly, we'd get the data numbers and I'm like, oh, shouldn't we do X, Y, and Z? He's like, just relax, man. He's like, we're assessing this as it goes. So getting that sort of like, again, maybe relinquishing control, but it's both sides of the brain.
Sure.
So be an English major winemaker, qualitative and quantitative. That was really, from a winemaking perspective, that was really good advice.
Love that. What's your happy place?
Um, I became a paddleboarder during the pandemic, and I thought paddleboarding was dumb beforehand, but now I'm like, it's amazing. So if you can put me in a Cascade Lake, like Elk Lake or something around Bachelor, that's great. But I'm also 1 hour from the coast.
Mm.
So sometimes I just pop in the truck, bring my dogs, park on the beach, crack a beer, watch the sunset. And that's good medicine.
It really is. Yeah. Paddleboarding is hard for me. It's very hard. Maybe because it's been windy. It's been too windy when I've tried. Yeah.
I took it to Hawaii, the paddleboard.
Okay.
And I actually, for the first time, I surfed in. And I'm not a surfer. I took it in, stuck the landing, and I was like, I have to leave now. I can't go back out there.
I'm done. I'm done. That's it. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And all things food and drink, what do you crave?
Yeah. Well, food, I think I mentioned. You give me a good Reuben.
Yeah.
Like, I'm down. Or maybe New York style pizza, but like, I've been really down. And actually, kudos locally, Red Hills Market here in Dundee.
Oh,
best Reuben in Oregon.
I crave Red Hills Market. I love Red Hills Market.
They also have a hoagie.
Yeah.
Very East Coast.
So their tuna melt. Their tuna melt is
tuna melt.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, they're good people.
Oh, you're killing me right now.
My drink of choice is, other than an IPA, is like I'm really into gin and tonics all of a sudden.
Okay.
Like get like a gin and tonic, like when I don't want wine, I don't want beer. Like that kind of like I can have a gin and tonic and just be like,
yeah,
I don't know.
They're clean.
It kind of resets me.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's clean.
Refreshing, loads of lime in it. You got to put lots of lime in it for me.
Yeah. I'm the kind of guy, like if I go to a restaurant that has like, the mixology, I don't even understand the things. Right. And I'm the jerk. I look at the thing. I go, can I just get a gin and tonic? Is that okay?
Nice.
And they're like, yeah.
But I have all the stuff that's infused and these herbs.
You don't want the lavender? I'm like, I don't want the lavender. I just want a G&T, man.
G&T. Well, Erich Berg, thank you for being so open and being very bouncy today. I love that. I'm going to start calling you Tigger if that's okay. You are very.
That's okay. I got to bounce around today. I got an event to finish.
I love it. Well, and you said this weekend is the Indie Wine
Memorial Weekend, both Saturday and Sunday.
Okay. Well, I'm going to miss that one. I'm not going to miss the one that's down south though. So I'll see you there.
Yep. You will see me there.
Thank you so much for doing this. Thank you so much again for being open and honest and telling me all the things. I really appreciate it. And just really excited we got to do this today.
Yeah, me too. Thank you so much. This was great. It was a great conversation. So I appreciate your time as well and the invitation.
And I'll see you soon. You've been listening to Hungry for More, an Epicurean's Dilemma with me, Trish Close. You can watch this podcast and subscribe on my YouTube channel. Just search Hungry for More, an Epicurean's Dilemma. You can also listen and subscribe wherever you like to listen to podcasts.